So let's get into it. What are the 3 reasons people would feel really creatively stuck? Well, one of the first reasons is your creative self is really suffering from routine fatigue. If you took a job for security because it was the safe thing to do, because that was the status quo, that's what your family wanted you to do, and you go to work and you pay the bills and you do all the things, and then at the end of the day, you just want to relax and chill out, and your creative self isn't really feeling alive and inspired and stimulated, that is being creatively stuck because of routine fatigue. Be really honest with yourself. Have you let that routine overshadow your creative desires and your creative passion? The second reason why you might be feeling creatively lost or stuck, and it could be either like one of these or all 3 of these reasons, is that your creative self is suffering from self-doubt and limiting beliefs. So what that looks like is anytime you even think about getting started, or maybe you get a little bit started, there's an inner voice that comes in and says, who do you think you are? You can't do this. There's no way that this is ever going to work. No one's going to like this. People are going to think you're crazy. What are people going to think of me? Your mom and dad are going to be very disappointed that you do this. Like all of these little things that start coming in that are beliefs. And by the way, beliefs aren't the truth. Beliefs are thoughts that we have over and over and over again. And that's where neurolinguistic programming comes in, where you rewire your brain so that you can have different thoughts and different beliefs. So if you think about it, a belief isn't necessarily the truth. It's only the truth because you believe it to be so. You can decide not to believe it and do something different about it. I'll get into that in just a little bit. Okay, so the third reason why you might be feeling creatively stuck, you guys, right now is pretty obvious. You might be flooded with fear, crisis, anxiety. And when we are operating from that space, from our fight or flight, that really shuts off that beautiful, sumptuous, luxurious, indulgent part of us that can stare at a canvas and think like, oh, I'm gonna put water lilies on here or paint a portrait. Those are the 3 reasons why you might be lacking creative direction and feeling creatively lost at this point. Now I want to give you some really practical, easy first steps. First, like little seeds to plant to help you move past this and create some direction for yourself in all of these instances. So if your creative self is suffering from routine fatigue, meaning that you go in, day out, and your creative self just really has no room to breathe, your creative self is like, like go ahead and have that glass of wine and chill out. Your job is to start the process of envisioning that life that you were attracted to before you started to pursue and settle for the secure option that really made sense for you. There's nothing wrong with creating security for yourself, but if it's at the cost of your soul's code and your soul's purpose, that's where discontent comes in, unhappiness comes in, all of that stuff that you may or may not be experiencing. I know that there was someone in my group who was saying that whole thing about how did I even get here? It was really resonating with person. And that is definitely falling under the routine fatigue. Like, how did life even become this way? So you have to rewind the movie of your life to before you made that decision that it was better to take a job that gave you a lot of security and everything. And what was the thing that you were giving up? What was the vision that you decided at that point was too difficult, too hard, no one was going to like it, you're not good enough, whatever that inner dialogue is? What was that vision? And your first practical step is to start meditating on it, start nurturing it, start pretending, like see if you can feel into that vision. And if you can start feeling into it just a little bit, there's going to be voices that are going to say like, oh, this is all bullshit, you're totally bullshitting yourself. But the whole thing is that we can bullshit ourselves into a new reality. So you want to start lying to yourself. If you were anything like me, you were taught to always tell the truth and never lie and be completely accurate at all times. But honestly, if you already think that what your soul was really put on this earth to do is too difficult, all of this stuff, you have to BS yourself, because honestly, you've been BS'd your entire life into thinking that you can't do it for one reason or another by people who believe and buy into their own limitations that were fed to them. Okay, so that's a whole different topic. But the whole thing is that you want to start BSing yourself into thinking like, oh, I wonder if that is possible. Start creating energy around it. Start creating energy around that vision. And then when you have that energy, just try one little step. At the end of the day, when you're done with your routine, can you carve out 30 minutes to just maybe either journal on it or sit around and tinker on the keyboard? Just 30 minutes. Give yourself just a little bit of time and keep pulling that thread. If that's what feels good to you, keep pulling that thread. And that should start. You have to practice this. None of this is a silver bullet. None of this is a magic pill. You have to do this day in and day out. Meditate, feel it, pray on it, and then incorporate some new action into your day. Don't feel like you have to go do your day, everything, and then do 5 hours. That's going to be too overwhelming. You want to give yourself those little wins when you're incorporating new beliefs and new structures to create a new paradigm in your life. You want to start off with little wins so you can feel the achievement of the win, as opposed to saying, like, if I don't practice piano for 3 hours tonight, then I'm a complete failure. Okay? Little wins. So that's how you deal with routine fatigue when you're feeling creatively lost. The second reason you might be feeling creatively lost and what to do about it, your creative self is suffering from self-doubt and limiting beliefs. And so anytime you even think of getting started, all of the reasons why it won't work just start flooding in. And we all have this, and we all get to do this work when we're shifting our paradigm and shifting our lives. So what you want to do with this is the first step. It's so easy and so simple, but it's so important. It's so important that if you go through my videos, you're going to see this everywhere. And I want you to understand that this is a really significant thing. Start noticing the thoughts that tell you that you can't. Simply notice them, write them down, and then start journaling on what might be true instead. And this goes back into BSing yourself into a new reality, into a new paradigm for your life. What can you do? Notice the thought. Ask yourself, is this ultimately true? And you'll start realizing that it's not ultimately true, and you can start writing things down that you wish you were true instead. If the thought is very difficult to make money as a musician, a new thought could be, well, what would Mick Jagger say about that? What would Paul McCartney say about that? And keep going back to those. Like, say, yes, thank you. I understand that this thought is here to serve something for me. But what if there was a way to do this? Or I wonder what SoundCloud is like, or Bandcamp, or different ways I could start building my platforms. Just being curious about different ways to be creative and the ways to overcome the self-doubt and those limiting beliefs. Now, again, this is not a magic pill. It has to be a practice thing that happens every day. I still get to do this in my practices around my goals and everything, because no matter how high you get, like the work is never done. There's just different levels. You shed certain layers, and then there's another thing that you get to deep dive into. So if your thing is limiting beliefs and self-doubt, thinking that you're not good enough, that you're not worthy, that it'll never work, all of those things, just write them down and objectively look at them, start noticing them, and then start with the question, is this ultimately true? And if you're so programmed to believe that it is ultimately true, go ahead and start questioning that. Start with where you're at. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just start with where you're at, okay? And you're doing great. You're doing absolutely great. This is the deep work. The noticing is the deep work. The noticing is consciousness of the unconscious mind, which is running the show and has been running the show the entire time. So becoming conscious of the unconscious actually opens up a whole new network of capabilities with your thoughts, feelings, and actions. So the third reason why you might be feeling creatively stuck and what to do about it is that you are flooded with fear, crisis, and anxiety. And yes, how we all can relate to this right now. Here's how I suggest you deal with being flooded with fear, crisis, and anxiety. Limit your news intake. Be very critically intentional of the news that you do take in. Find outlets that jive with your neurology in a way where you don't immediately go into fear or anxiety. I notice that if I go onto CNN, there's an immediate physiological reaction. Whereas if I listen to a long form conversation, say on Tim Ferriss or the Joe Rogan Experience with an epidemiologist, I have a different physiological reaction and I'm still informed and I can still go about my day. Now, this is a thing of moving in from fear to faith. So if you're thinking at this time that this isn't a good time to create, this isn't a good time to indulge my passions, I would propose that now is actually the most important time to examine and indulge your creative passions or your soul passions that you have been putting on the shelf for who knows how long, because a lot of us don't even get started on what we want because we're too scared, or we get started and we run into an obstacle or a roadblock and it's too painful to experience failure or rejection. So we want to protect ourselves and pull back. So I've been saying to everyone who will listen for a second that right now, if you go full throttle in on your dreams during one of the most difficult times fraught with so much uncertainty and so much pain and chaos around us, that if you go all in, this is actually really fertile ground for your creation, for your dream to take shape during a time when honestly there's so many different things shedding in our society and everything. So it's actually a perfect time for you to bring into existence the thing that you've always wanted to create, the thing that you've been dreaming of. There are just fragments of systems falling to the wayside. So what do you want your life to look like when you come in? And also, how do you want to learn from this experience? How do you want to learn from this time what you are made of? Is this the time where you step forward and you step up to the altar of your creativity? Or is this the time where you use the coronavirus to continue a narrative of, I will create someday when the time is good enough or when the time is right? You guys, the time is never going to be right. You're never going to be fully prepared. Faith is taking this first step without seeing the entire staircase. And the stronger your faith is in yourself, the more willing you are to move forward when the staircase is dark, 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 the more you are going to have an advantage, the more you are going to have an inner strength that translates to your outer world in a way that you're really going to love when all of this is over, and this too will pass. So what seeds are you going to plant in the midst of the chaos, the anxiety, and all the crisis messaging so that you can build and plant and cultivate your new normal, the new normal that you were craving before coronavirus asked us all to stay inside, contemplate, reflect, and go inside, not just inside our houses, but go inside ourselves and see what is there. What have we been ignoring? What have we been neglecting? What is important to us? And if you can get to that spot by reducing the amount of fear-based content that you take in and maybe listening to a meditation, if you can meditate and be in communities. I also have a Facebook community if you want it. If you can be in communities where the conversation is focused on overcoming the fear instead of drilling down and getting lost in the fear, then you're going to have more mental and spiritual space to think about what you do want to create as we move forward from this, as we go forward into a different reality. You have the power to create the life that you want. The biggest lie that we have been sold is that we are limited, and there's a narrative being controlled on a micro level and a macro level saying that we only have limited options when we actually have infinite options for the kind of lives that we can create. I want you to know you're incredibly powerful, and this is the time to lean into that. Now, that doesn't mean don't take care of yourself. That doesn't mean don't meditate. That's a part of it, is getting into an aligned state, a safe state, a faith based state, and then really sitting there and thinking about like, what do I want to create from here? What am I here to do? What is my mission? What are my visions for my life? And what are my values? And when I say mission, vision, values, I don't mean it has to be some grandiose kind of earth-saving kind of thing. It can be an individual kind of thing. And by the way, when you decide to follow your heart and fly your creative flag and heal yourself and do the work, overcoming the limiting beliefs, overcoming the routine fatigue, overcoming the voices of fear, while you're doing all of that, when you heal yourself, other people are going to notice what you're doing and they're going to feel safer to do it themselves. Because guess what? If you're there thinking like, I can't do this, I don't know how this is going to work, so I'm just going to follow status quo and everything, and they see you move out of that, there's going to be someone else who's like, oh, well, if they can do it, then maybe I can do it too. And it causes a virtuous cycle on a very localized scale. And that is a beautiful, powerful thing. So start doing it for yourself. Start doing it for your own healing, because really that's what the world needs right now, is healing on an individual level. And then it goes out into a really wider scale. Now, that is that's kind of an aside on how to get back to your creative direction and your focus, what to do about it. But I strongly believe, you guys, this is a really, really beautiful time to go back to yourself. What are you going to create for yourself coming out of this? Because everything is shifting. So what do you get to shift, heal, release, or resolve inside of you so that you can be fully aligned with what it is that you want to do in your life? You know, let me know. Let me know. And thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it.